Okay, on this second mini lesson, we will talk about the different functions that the nouns can have. You can see them here on screen right now. Now, these 14 functions are well known for us. We are going to make an overview, of course, right now. But remember that the most important tool you have right now is your book. Okay, these concepts, these explanations are much better explained in the textbook. So, the first three functions that a noun can have is that of a subject, a predicate nominative, or a direct object. Now, if it is a subject, remember that when we talk about the subject, is who or what does an action, or who or what we are talking about in the sentence. Bear in mind that the subject does not always start the sentence. We don't identify the subject of a sentence by position. We identify the subject of a sentence by the verb. Depending on the verb, you can figure out if it is at the beginning of the sentence or at the end of the sentence. Now, imagine this sentence, for example. My good friend found a nice place to make camp. Okay? Now, please remember that I explained to you that before you start assigning roles to the nouns, you have to identify them. If you start assigning roles to the nouns at the same time as you find them, the problem is that you will start to classify things as nouns which are not really nouns. Now, what are the nouns that we have in this sentence? My, no, that's not a noun. Good could be a noun, but in this case it's not because it's giving information about friend. Okay? Now, good is a noun when it means bien. Usually we use it in the plural, like saying bienes, the goods, los bienes. Okay? But I'm not using it in this concept right now. Not the concept of things that you have that are useful, that have a price, that have a benefit. But check this word, friend. Friend can be a noun. It's usually a noun, but it's not always a noun. Because friend can also be, yes, you guessed it, friend can also be a verb. To friend someone. In other words, to become friends. Now, I know this is a noun because I can pluralize it first. That's why I know this is a noun. So I come here and I'm going to underline it. No, that's too ugly. Give me a second. Okay, I'm going to underline it. Oopsie daisies. I'm going to underline this. Give me a second, people. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. There's friend, it's underlined. I know it's a noun because I can make it plural, as I told you. Check place. Can you make the word place plural? Yes. Is place always a noun? No. Place is not always a noun. Do you guys remember the concept of conversion? It's the key concept I told you about in the first lesson. It's the word I told you. If you're going to learn anything from this first lesson, learn the concept of conversion. But I don't mean only learn the word. I mean learn to understand that a word can take several parts of speech. A word can take on several different meanings, right? So, place can also be a verb, like colocar. But in this case, it's not that meaning. I know this is a noun, so I'm going to underline it as well. And check, we have here the noun camp too. So I underline it as well. Now, in this sentence, one of these words is the subject. Only one of these can be the subject. And I'm going to find it by paying attention to the verb, right? You have the verb right here. Yes, there's the verb. And then you gotta ask yourself, who did this action? Who did the verb? Who found? Or what? What found? Well, in this case, who found? Who did the action of finding? My good friend. So, I know friend is the subject because he is the one who did the action. Some other times, it's not about who does an action. Some other times, it's about who or what we are talking about. Like in this case, let's say Kevin. Kevin, I hope you are doing fine. Kevin was in the swimming pool, let's say. There we go. I have the noun Kevin. I know it's a noun because it's a proper noun. I have pool. I know it's a noun because I can pluralize it, right? Now, this is the verb. The verb tells me not that Kevin is doing an action. It only shows me that Kevin is the center of attention. It shows the state. Who was? Who was in the pool? Kevin. Or was the pool in Kevin? That doesn't make sense, right? So, Kevin would be the subject for this sentence. Okay? Now, that's the subject, people. And the predicate nominative, you know how we find a predicate nominative? We know that a predicate nominative requires a linking verb, right? So, for you to identify a predicate nominative, you come here, let's say, some of the children, let's use a linking verb, the most typical verb, let's say where, let's say Marcela's children, Marcela's nephews. Now, again, let's identify the nouns first. Oops, sorry, I have underlined everything. There we go. Children is a noun. I know it's a noun because it's plural. And I have a concept of children right here. Then, some is not a noun. See, this is why I tell you that we must first identify the nouns. Because if we start assigning roles at the same moment that we find the words, we are going to end up classifying things that are not nouns. Because some is the subject. Some is the subject for this sentence, but some is not a noun. Some is a pronoun. Now, here we have Marcela's, yes, the possessive case, more properly called in grammar the genitive case. And here we have nephews. All right. I don't classify the subject right now because the subject is not a noun. Then I go to children. Children is a noun. It's not the subject. It's the object of the preposition of. Now, to be quite clear, children is part of the subject, but part of the complete subject. And when we classify a noun as the subject, then this noun must always be the simple subject, right? Whenever we are classifying a subject, in the case of nouns, what we are classifying are the simple subjects. So, even though the complete subject of the sentence is some of the children, the word children per se is the object of the preposition of. Now, Marcela's is the genitive. Yes, we already discussed this, so we will simply say genitive. And here we have nephews. Nephews is the predicate nominative. Why? Because I have this linking verb, and it answers the question what or who. Some of the children were who? Marcela's nephews. They were the nephews. So, they are the same thing. Some of the children are the same thing as Marcela's nephews. Not all of them, some of them. And that is the case of the predicate nominative. Now, oops, sorry, not here. The direct object. We know that we find a direct object that after a transitive verb, only after a transitive verb, and this is important, not only because it's after a transitive verb, we are going to say that that's a direct object. We need to make sure that it answers the question what or who after the verb. After the verb. Remember, this is very important, this is key. You can ask the question what or who in many different places in the sentence, but you will not find a direct object in each of those instances. To find the direct object, you can only ask the question what or whom after the verb. Immediately after the verb, if you ask the question and you get an answer, then you have a direct object. Now, let me show you another example of a direct object. Let's get rid of this and say Laura has stopped the tourists from entering our country. There we go. Check. Again, I know this is a proper noun, so I underline it. First identify the nouns and then start assigning roles. Not the other way around. Oh, tourists. Has stopped the tourists. See, this word is plural. I know per se that it's a noun. And country, I know it's a noun. I live in one of them, right? So, who did the action? Who has stopped the tourists? Laura did it. So Laura is the subject of the sentence. And now pay attention. Laura has stopped who? Or whom, to be more precise. Laura has stopped whom? She has stopped the tourists. She hasn't stopped what, right? But it has stopped whom? The tourists. The tourists, well, tourists is the direct object. And country? What is country? Huh? Well, country is the object of from or the object of entering. Pause the video, think for a second, and come back with your answer. Yes, if you guessed that country is the object of entering, you are right. Country is the object of entering. And this is another function that nouns can do. We already covered this in class, right? So I think this is not a surprise for you. And those are the first three functions that nouns can perform. And I'm afraid I will have to stop right now because time is almost over for me to record this short video. I'll continue on the next one explaining about the indirect object, object complements, and appositive.